Welcome to episode 36 of Chess Whiz TV. Today is July 8th, 2014, and we are doing lessons on the endgame, which is going to bore you out of your mind because the endgame is seriously the most boring part of chess. But hey, you gotta know how to do it. Sometimes you mess up and you're in an endgame. Sometimes you didn't checkmate them in the opening and something went wrong. You gotta figure out how to play the endgame. That's when there's just a few pieces left. Now, endgame, if that comes in the beginning because you're checkmating them, that's not really the endgame. This is like where you got pawns, maybe a pair of rooks, maybe a bishop and a knight. That's it. You're just down to a few pieces. So if you can make it through this hour of boring chess, I'm impressed. If I fall asleep while casting, now you know why. It's because we're doing the end game. If you guys like a little bit better of a camera-ish thing, that's because we have a little bit better of a camera-ish thing going on right now. We're in 720p. However, I doubt that I'm streaming at 720p. So let me know if the stream is like stuttering because I'm spitting out them bits too quickly, or let me know if it's all blurry because I'm not spitting out quick enough. Because everyone has a different download speed, so I just kind of have to get a feel for that. So let's jump over to the chess and see what we can do. Clear board, zoomed Lichess is what I call this view because it's so zoomed. Right over there is the zoomed Lichess, and right down here is the schedule. Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday is when we cast Chess with TV, and right up there is the most epic logo ever, in my humble opinion. So let's talk about the endgame. In the endgame, there's not a lot of pieces, so let's take the most simple endgame possible. Well, that looks pretty simple. If you try to play a game like this online, it's just going to go boom, draw. And you're like, what? I wanted to play the endgame. But over the board, you can actually do this. You can move your kings around, and I've seen this happen in a tournament because some of the tournaments I've been to had kindergarten sections where there's 6-year-olds playing, and they'll actually trade all the way down to this kind of position, and they'll move their kings around because they don't really know what's going to happen next. And then, get this, I've seen this. Okay, so black moves, white moves, black moves, white moves, black moves, white moves, black moves. White goes here. This happened in a tournament game. And then black took the king, and black said, I win, I took your king. And white was like, oh, good move, good move. And white was declared the winner. The tournament director was like, what do I do? I guess I should say that black won because they both agree that black won. Yeah, kindergarten chess is the most awesome chess ever. So this is actually a good position to study. If you think I'm an idiot, maybe you're right, but not because of this. Because it matters whose turn it is in a position like this when the kings are facing each other. Let me explain. If it's black's turn, he has to move to one side or the other or back. He can't just pass. This is key in an endgame. In the middle game, there's plenty of useful things to do. In the endgame, sometimes not so much. Sometimes there's nothing useful that you have that you can do with your pieces. So you have to make something that a detrimental move. So here, black has to move to the side, and then white can continue to face him, or he can go around to the side. So this is called, there's a technical term for this. It's called having the opposition. The opposition means the kings are facing each other one space apart, and it's the other guy's turn. And this is one of those weird cases in chess where actually the other guy's turn is a good thing for you. He has to move out of the way, and then you are able to advance or pass through or block or do something else. So in this case, black has to move, and white can face him off. Black moves, and white can now go around him. So let's say this is the position, and white's challenge is to get up to one of these three squares, f8, g8, or h8. This is actually a clear case of where opposition is useful. If it's black's turn, this is possible for white. If it's black's turn, white can force himself into these positions. Watch what happens. Black wants to guard those. White takes opposition. Black wants to guard him. White takes opposition. Black wants to guard him. White takes opposition. Now black has to go to one side or the other. Okay, so he goes this side. Now white kind of goes around that. This is called triangulation. Black is guarding these squares, so he has to go this way. Now white, shazam, takes opposition again. So this move, moving so that the kings are facing each other one space apart like this, is called taking opposition, and it's what forces the opponent off to one side or the other. So here we do it again. Triangulate, and now take opposition. So if it were white's turn here, once again, he could not get through, but since black has to move, white gets around. And if it's on the other side, white still gets around like this, and it reaches f8. So let's say that it were white's turn here. Can he get through? He actually can. Black takes opposition. Black takes opposition. Black takes opposition. No matter what white does, black blocks him off. So this is actually important. You might think, why am I wasting my time with just kings on the board? But take a look at this position. I'm making this a real chess game now, guys. This is no longer waste of time chess. It's real chess. So imagine that you're white here. What a great position. Your king is further advanced because it's up kind of like within wingspan reach of these pawns. By the way, I learned yesterday that this is called your wingspan even if you haven't got no wings, because in the game of football, the more wingspan you got, the better goalie you are. So white's got a great wingspan here to his pawns. Black's pushed back a little bit more, and obviously this is bad in the end game because you want to be kind of controlling the center just like in the rest of the game. So whose turn would you like it to be? You're white, you're attacking, you're doing well, but you're not quite won yet. I mean, he still has 2 pawns. Better kill those guys and then show him who's boss. So if it's your turn here, is this good? Actually, this is a case where it's opposition and you want it to be your opponent's turn. So white here, if he has to move, he has to move back somewhere. Let's say he goes here. Black takes opposition. Now look, it's the same position except the other guy's moving forward. You're on the bat foot back. The bat foot. You're on the bat foot. You have to move to one side, and then black triangulates around you. You can't move up because this pawn guards it. You're like stuck back in this corner. Black's going to take this pawn and promote this pawn and beat you. So that was quite bad. Did you see what happened there? Your turn, and that was bad for you. Let's look at it again. Move straight back. Black takes opposition. Move to one side. Black triangulates, and black wins the game. Even though you were doing better, you lost. That doesn't make sense. Maybe you made a mistake. It turns out you did. By moving straight back, you allowed the opponent to get opposition. So take a look and see if you can find a better move instead of king e3. Oh, someone's asking me, will this be on YouTube? Yes, it will be on YouTube about 3 hours after the broadcast, the live broadcast. Typed that into chat. Aren't I epic? I'm going to hide it on Twitch. So if you go to twitch.tv to try to find the past episode, it might not be there. Go to the YouTube channel instead. But there's a link to the YouTube channel from the Twitch channel so you won't get too lost. Okay, if you had your time looking at this, yes, you found the correct move. Instead of moving straight back to take opposition or to lose opposition to the opponent, you move diagonally. Diagonally, like a bishop. Now, black wants to take opposition, but this would be as illegal as speeding in your motor vehicle because a pawn would capture you. So you move forward, right? This pawn's guarding here, this pawn's guarding here, so you can't quite get anywhere except straight forward. Now white plays the Tsuji, or the brilliancy, as you'd call it in chess. And now white takes opposition. Black's turn. He could make the same horrible mistake as what opponent almost did, but he goes diagonally. White cannot take opposition here, so he advances forward. Now black takes opposition. You see what I did there? Absolutely nothing. The position is the same as it was. Diagonally, move up, take opposition. So it's this moment of taking opposition that's saving the position for whoever's being forced back. It's saving the game for him. Diagonally, white moves up, take opposition. So you can see this concept of opposition is actually determining the winner of this game. If you move straight back, you lose because then you're forced to one side and black wins. So this comes into effect in a lot of pawn games. Not so much if there's a bishop or knight on the board for obvious reasons. It's because you have to move. You have to move out of the way. If you've got a bishop, you'll often have a way to waste a move with your bishop. Just go somewhere else with your bishop. If you've got a knight, you can usually do that. Every now and then, you've got an endgame where your pieces are just so frozen up that you're in Zugzwang, which means you don't want to move, but it's your turn and you have to. That's what the opposition's all about. But usually it's just a king and pawn endgame because pawns don't have a lot of choices. As you can see, no choices at all. And so that's when this can happen. Did you get all that? This is important. Important. Same deal without these pawns. If it's white's turn, how can he capture this? He moves, black blocks him. 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 He can't move here. He moves back, straight back. Black takes opposition. Now black's going to win. So white has to not do that. He has to go here so that black can't take opposition, and then he goes here. Actually, I think black can win by taking diagonal opposition this way. Take a look at that. This is a little bit unusual, but you should know this kind of thing. This is also opposition through the diagonal, one space diagonally. So now when white shifts over, black takes the normal opposition. And now black's still going to win by taking diagonal here. So at this point, you can't take opposition, but you triangulate this way. White cannot advance, so he's forced to do something else. Actually, white can still draw this game, I believe, because at the moment, black takes the pawn, take the pawn, then white takes opposition one more time, and we'll cover that. That makes this a draw because white can stop this pawn. We'll cover that real soon. The next thing I want to talk about besides this diagonal opposition is there's actually distant opposition. In this position, well, let's put white on the bottom so you guys don't get all motion sick. In this position, white can take the opposition. It's kind of hard to see, but by moving here, he's at least an odd number or an even number of squares away. You can see this is your main opposition, and here's your distant opposition. It's like double the distance. And this is technically still opposition. If nothing else can move but kings, then white can continue to take this opposition by moving to a space like this. When black advances, white can take it. The rule is, if you've got it, the opponent can't take it from you in one move. So in this position, does white have it? No, black can take it in one move by moving here. And you can actually have super weird distant opposition like this, where, okay, so you draw a box for the kings, black square, white square, white square. You want to make the box all the same color square. So black square, black square. If this were black, which it is, and this were black, which it is, then it would be all the same color square. So white takes super mind-bending version of opposition by moving here. And now, because all the corners of the square made of kings are the same color, he's got opposition. And that hardly ever matters in chess. But maybe it will 1 out of 10,000 games for you, because no matter where these kings move, white can continue to take opposition with each move, and blah, 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 blah. Then it gets close, and then you dive around him, and then you take his pawn and make a new queen, and checkmate him with your queen. That could happen. And now my nose is itching, so I need to blow the man down, blow the nose. Hide myself. Hide, hide. I'll BRB. Was that exciting? That was like the best part. Whoa, that looks weird. That was like the best part of the cast. That was exactly as boring as the rest of the cast. Very good. So, people are asking me in chat, is this really important? Do you really need to know this stuff? Yes. When you get into a position with just kings and pawns, you need to know this stuff. So let's take that position we were just looking at where black's coming at you, because this is critical. A perfect example. Someone's complaining about my nose. He's saying, you have been blowing your nose for months. Why don't you just upgrade your firmware or something? Then you won't have to blow your nose. I don't know. It's July now, so the allergy season's pretty much wrapping up for me here in La La Land, so perhaps that's going to happen. So diagonal opposition, straight opposition. Black's beating you. Black's triangulating. I can't move up. You take it diagonal, but now even though you have opposition, your pawn is dead meat. So how do you defend this? You keep opposition. Watch what happens. Take opposition, and now the pawn advances, because black can't do anything else. If he keeps moving back and forth, white keeps taking opposition. So this position is a draw, but you have to know what you're doing. How do you defend this position? This is what I'm going to teach you right now. If you already know this, you can just skip ahead 5 minutes in the video if you're watching on YouTube. Otherwise, maybe you can't skip ahead because you're watching on Twitch and it's a live broadcast. Sorry, I'm wasting your time. So in this position, opposition is still the key. The problem is this pawn really gets in the way, because a king here is so illegal. It's like 100% illegal. So the key here is the 2 squares in front of the pawn where the pawn is going to advance. You want to keep your king as the defender on one of these 2 squares pretty much all the time. Because if you're on one of these 2 squares, the opponent can't get around and take opposition from you. So if you're here, let's say, black's king is going to be somewhere back here, and he cannot advance. If you're here, he can advance, but that's the key. As soon as he advanced, it's your turn. Obviously, he just advanced. And then you can take opposition like this. I can't do it with that. I'm looking at the camera for you guys, and now I can't operate my mouse. Boom. Taking opposition. So all black could do is move back more or advance his pawn. When he advances his pawn, he moves the target squares up. So it's easy to keep that defense going. All he can do is wait around for you to move back. You move straight back to stay in these 2 squares. Now when he tries to come around the pawn, you boom, you take opposition just like that. This is key. This is how to draw this game. Okay, so advance with check. All else black can do is move back, and then you're going to move up again, so he has to wait around. He moves up, and then boom, you've taken opposition. Advance with check, and now this is the time-tested position of frustration, because black's turn and he cannot win. If he could just pass, white would have to move out of the way, and then he would advance and win. But because passing's not allowed, he has to move. His only choices are stalemate, which is a draw. If you don't know why, look it up on Wikipedia. And move away, which means he loses his pawn. So this is like those weird positions where if only you could pass. Of course, if you could pass, the opponent would pass 2, and then 3 passes and it's a draw. You know that rule? Well, neither do I. Okay, so how did white get this draw? It's by moving straight back. It's by keeping the opposition at the critical moment. So let's say white's a doofus and he doesn't do that. He moves diagonally first. So black's doing this. White goes here. Now you can say, aha, this is a mistake because you understand this kind of position. When black moves up, he's taking the opposition. This theme is just coming up over and over. White has to move. It's his turn. Nothing better than this. Pawn advances. Same position, but now it's white's turn, which means he's a loser. He moves here. Black comes up. Black promotes to a queen, or he could promote to a rook because he could show off his abilities, checkmating with a rook, and just rub it in white's face. So that's a draw, and it's even worse if the pawn is way over here. You can probably imagine why. There's no way to force white to king z2. Whoa, where's that king going? There's no way to force that move. And because of that, there's no other side. And because of that, you really can't win this game. And white just goes back and forth and back and forth. No matter what black does, as soon as this check comes, it's going to be stalemate. So the rook pawn is really drawish. By meaning that, I mean the file where the rook starts here. And if it's in the center, you're okay as long as you can get your king up in front of the pawn. So let's say you're racing over to it here. Black should move somewhere aggressive. That's reasonable. White takes opposition. That's reasonable. White takes opposition. Black wastes a move with his pawn. Now white has to move out of the way. So black's going to win this. You see how like this tiny difference changes who wins the game. Black can win if white has to move here. He has to move to the side. Black moves up here. Now he's covering all 3 squares. He just goes 1, 2, 3, makes a new bride for himself. But if it's black's turn, white can actually draw because he just keeps taking opposition, taking opposition, taking opposition, taking opposition, taking opposition. Finally, black says this is the dumbest thing ever, and he pushes his pawn. Now the 2 target squares are up here, and white can move into them. Oh, wait, he loses. Oh, he loses. I'm lying to you guys. He advances again. King has to move out of the way, and then up and he wins. Okay, the reason that happened is because it was all right here on the 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th ranks. If this were all pushed back a square, it wouldn't be so true at all. Here, here, push. Target squares is okay because there's a little bit more room to be sane. So now here, you're not forced out here. You can move straight back to these target squares and you're okay. So it turns out that if you're right up here against the edge, then you could win with your king out in front of the pawn. But if it's more back here, which is usually how it is, guys, it's usually that way. So don't blame me that I was lying to you. It was totally an accident. Then it's not that way. In chat, people are basically saying this doesn't matter at all. Is that true? Let's see. That was not boring. Wow, that was not boring. Amazing. It would be nice if you did a video on YouTube with this knowledge. Yeah, this is going on YouTube, and most of the people who watch this are going to see it on YouTube, so they're probably thinking I'm on YouTube already. But this is going to be in the ChessWiz TV channel. Search for ChessWiz TV and you can find it. Dun 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 dun. Interesting comments. Interesting. Fascinating comments. Okay, so that's really simple stuff. Really simple. Now let's move on to something more advanced, like 2 pawns at the same time. Wow, who's going to win now? Well, nobody. So let's do something a little bit more interactive. So now that we know opposition, we know pawns, all that stuff, let's throw some pawns on here. like this. Pawns are on. They're totally on. They're on Tron. I knew a man once named Ontron. His name was actually Ontron, On being his first name, Tron being his last name. He was not named after the movie. And it was pretty fun knowing him. But then he moved away. I was sad about that. So now I can talk about him because he moved away. So here's a pretty balanced position, right? Each player has 7 pawns. I'm going to click this button you can't see. It says play with a friend. And then I'm going to switch my view to this one. And then I'm going to click a random color. And then I'm going to grab this link and put it in chat. Whoever clicks it first gets to try this game with me. We're gonna do like interactive lessony thing. And the winner is Anonymous. Unfortunately for Anonymous, he has not really joined. This red arrow means he's not here. So let's see, Anonymous, if you can learn from that cast. Or if you just can't even move. Are you having trouble with your computadora? Because I don't see any login activity from you. And if you don't move soon, I'm going to disconnect you because Viewers have better things to do with their time than watch you not play chess. 5, 4, 3, I'm counting up while counting down. 2, 1, give up. Game aborted. Oh, so sad, too bad. Let's try again. Games, board editor. This is how you guys can play custom positions. Clear board, throw pawns on. Why am I having to do this again? Is the viewership horrible or what? I should not have to do this. This is like having to be a fast food worker. It's for other people. Play with a friend. Okay, here comes a different link. And I hope the same guy doesn't copy and paste. I hope the same guy doesn't troll me again. Okay, this time it's Pseuder. Great, Pseuder. You've got an actual account, so you're not going to ruin your reputation by just stalling me like that. 8-1. Good job, Pseuder. You've got the fastest mouse in the West. I've got the fastest mouth in the West, but you have the fastest mouse. I can't pronounce things, but I've got the mouth. Are you ready? Go. I typed go because I mean it. Oh, I have to start. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant I go. So another thing I didn't even tell you guys, law. I'll just say law. Law. Another thing I didn't tell you guys in the lesson, because it's obvious, is you have to fight with your king. In the endgame, you have to fight with your king. So let's take some space, just like in the center. You have to fight with your king in the endgame. I'm just going to tell you this during this little endgame exercise here with Pseuder, because it's kind of obvious. Because you'd notice it if you ever watch a game of chess, you'll see the players doing it. And this is nose itchy. Oh, so frustrating. But not as frustrating as it is for you guys. Takes him center. So at least his king is forced back. So what I'm trying to say is when there's enough trades, when the knights and bishops come off the board, you know, there's queens are gone, just rooks, that's when you bring your king out. And to know the exact moment is kind of an art. You just have to play a lot of chess and get a feel for, oops, that was too soon, now I'm in checkmate, or oops, that was too late, he's taking my pawns and making a queen in my house. So somewhere in between there is where you bring your king out. It's typically when there's like 2 or 3 pieces per side left on the board, and that's it. So using your king is critical in the end game. It's like a fighting piece. The king actually, in my opinion, is worth about the same as a knight or bishop, and I don't mean trade it for the other guy's bishop. That would be extremely of low intelligence. What I mean instead is its fighting power is about a bishop. So if you're off on one side of the board fighting his bishop with your king, that's going to be like an even fight. And then over on the other side, his king's fighting your knight. That's like an even fight too. Kind of a waste of trivia there because you can't do anything with that knowledge. But that's about how strong a king is. So use your king, otherwise you're fighting as if you're down on knight or a bishop. In this position, I don't really want to capture. That'll pull his king out into the center where his king can fight better. So I'll push. Instantly, we've got an imbalance here. What you see is a pawn majority on the king side, which means 4 pawns against 3. So that means, technically speaking, he can push through here and make a passed pawn and promote to a queen. On my side of the board, I've got 3 to 4 advantage on this side as well. So this is like a lopsided, so someone might win here. In reality, it's a 0, 0, 0, 0. Nobody wins. But we're human beings, so one of us will mess up and the other one will win. This is a great move, take some space on this side of the board. And I'll just push my pawn up to take some space as well. So probably we're going to draw, but something interesting might happen. We got a pretty strong opponent. I mean, Pseuder's rating is almost the year that the United States Independence of Declaration was written, which was 1776. He's only off by 10 years, so that's a pretty high rating. So maybe he's just going to play me to a draw and nothing will happen. But we might learn something. So am I going to push? No, my position falls apart. Is he going to push? No, his position falls apart. So maybe nothing will happen. That's going to be so dull. Dull. I meant to say dull. It's going to be so dull, so we'll move on to something cool after this, because we don't have time to play Pseuder all day. Really, we don't. We're already 25 minutes in. Okay, can I advance through, or is this really just completely locked up? I want to find a path in for my king, because I want to fight with my king. Just made a mistake, he says. Oh, just make a mistake, it'll go faster. That's true. By pushing here, I hope to make inroads over here. Oh, now I can come in. So now there is a way for my king to come in. King c3, king b3, king a4, king b5, king takes b6. So let's go do that. In the meantime, he'll make a passed pawn over here. Things will get interesting. Things are now interesting. Interesting. Fight with my king. My king will be more centralized. This is great. You want your king to be the best king on the board. If I move here, he can't push or I take it. He can't push there or I take this. If he captures, why, at least my king is the best king on the board. So that's what I'm going to do. Change my plans about going off to the country far away. For me, that would be a distant country, but for you guys, you probably live in that country, so I'm not going to even say it, for fear of insulting the livers in that country. Since you're living there, you are actually livers. I'm making a passed pawn. I'm going to talk about passed pawns, and I'm going to talk about outside passed pawns, which is the best kind. You don't want your pawns to sit around inside playing video games. You want them outside. The reason is they're far away from everyone, including the opponent's king. Outside passed pawn is a pawn that's far away from the rest of the action. So like a pawn that's way over on the side of the board. And in this case, this is kind of outside because it's over here on the side of all these pawns. And he says, looks like you win. If I advance here, I don't know if I do. I don't know. If I check, he blocks. Okay, this is great. My outside passed pawn is going to help me win. I check, he blocks me, meanwhile I move here. Now my pawn is a threat to win, meanwhile I move over here. And I take all his stuff. Maybe. He's saying, or do you really win? I can't tell. Endgames are weird, aren't they? There's only 6 or 7 pieces left on the board, and we, smart human beings, can't even figure out who's supposed to win this. Okay, so if I move king up, then I could check, but if I move, so if I move king up, he has to come back here to block, because otherwise I'll move king up again and then check queen, queen. Okay, so he has to come block. Then I take opposition. Doesn't matter here very much that I have opposition, because all these guys can still move. Then he pushes, and then I run over here and take this. Kibitz from people in chat say king c6, which is this move. I'll do it. Because people in chat are extremely intelligent. Did you know that was Blitzstream in the chat? If you ever heard of Blitzstream, you need to hear about him if you haven't ever heard of Blitzstream. Because he also does a stream on lightchess.org, which is where we are, except he's way better than I am. So you should watch his stream. Okay. So now am I going to lose? Did he kibitz a move so I lose? So I take opposition, and then he wants to take back. Okay, you can have a take back. You can have a take back. I think you'd better move there, because otherwise king c7, check, check, queen. And yeah, great. Actually, no, he redoes it. Okay, so here, and I want to go take these pawns as fast as I can. This outside passed pawn is an edge for me if my king can get over here in time, because I can gobble up all these. Meanwhile, he's spending all his time taking this one pawn. If I capture, then I cannot win because I'm left with only a side pawn. As we discussed, you can't really promote with the side pawn. But I could still lose. If I push, he pushes here, he's going to make a passed pawn that I can't stop. I don't think I really liked king c6 Blitzstream. I think you're trying to make me lose with that horrible kibitz. Horrible. Horrible. I think I have to draw this. I think I have to capture to draw. Push, you push h4, king in, and I can't. Yeah, I have to take it. Now nothing happens. Offer a draw. Should I click that offer draw button? Huh? Why not, right? Why not click it? Maybe I can win, though. Oh, nope. I can't win. I can sing like someone who's not singing. But I can't win because I'm left with only this pawn. Maybe I can win. Let's find out. I have to take this guy off the board right here because when he promotes, he's really going to cause me a headache. So I capture that, and then I think about how to win. I don't think I can, though. If I could only capture both. Protect that, otherwise I can't win. Wait, I can. Oh! Guys, I can win! And it's the most amazing thing. Sideways opposition for the win. Sideways opposition is so rare that it's useful. But in this case, I'm taking opposition and it's sideways. Take a look. Normally opposition is facing each other vertically, but this way is not. And I'm keeping him out of the queening square area with the sideways opposition move. So when he moves up, I block. When he moves up, I block. Now, if it were my turn, it's not he doesn't really have opposition. I mean, I have an extra pawn. So this isn't technically opposition, sorry, but at least my king is facing his king. Because true opposition is where the pawns can't advance, and so it's actually bad that you have to move out of the way. So he resigns and I win. What a fascinating endgame. Let's ask the computer for some analysis. Oh, what? There's no computer analysis button. That's so disappointing. And I'm getting challenges from people. Sorry. And I'm getting someone saying "Hua, hua, 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 hua" in the chat. That sounds fascinating. So that's enough king and pawn. Let's go to board editor and talk about some more pawns. King and pawn is just so important in chess because it's like the most common endgame and the most difficult to play perfectly. Actually, not perfectly. You know what I mean. So I won that game and I shouldn't have. Thank you, Suitor, for letting me win. Interesting, wasn't it? Same number of pawns, but that outside pass pawn. So let me talk about that now. Outside pass pawn versus pawn majority. You see the problem here? I mean, the material's even, so you'd say, well, each player has the same amount of pawns. Yeah, that's a draw. But the outside pass pawn is going to make white win. White starts driving with this pawn because it just got its driver license. It turned 16 here in the United States. White can spend his time eating this stuff for lunch. So while black's wasting his time chasing this thing down like a dog, dogs chase cars, get it? White captures these and then promotes these pawns. So this is actually a win. Push, or actually don't even push. Just start walking in. Walk in. Black tries to block. Here, now black's, he doesn't want to advance these guys because they'll get weaker. As they come forward, then they're just closer for white to go nom nom. So black just is like, well, I need to go capture that. White, meanwhile, just goes to take these. Now the pawns are starting to get worried. You see the advantage white has? He's like 4 or 5 moves ahead in the area of the board that matters, which is suddenly over here. Meanwhile, black has to go capture these. So maybe I didn't make those moves perfectly, but the theory, the rule of thumb is correct. The outside pass pawn is like a winning advantage here. So watch out for those. Now take a look at this potent position here. Once again, 4 pawns to 4. But this is called a protected passed pawn. By the way, a passed pawn is a pawn that can get to the queenie square. No pawns can stop it. So this is obviously not passed because this guy's totally in the way. This is still not passed because he could capture. And it's a theoretical stopping of the pawn. So anytime it's on an adjacent file, so that'd be this file, or over here on the Z file, then it's not a passed pawn. If there's a tactical reason that it can't advance, like, oh, look, there's a bishop, and it's pinning that pawn, so now it can get through, that's not what I'm talking about. That does not make it pass just because there's a tactical reason. You actually have to say there's absolutely no pawns here. That's why it's a passed pawn. So passed pawn is where there's no pawn in the way and no pawn on either side because that could capture. Now if it's on the side but it's moved beyond, it's already way up here, so it can never capture because pawns don't move backwards, it's still passed. So this is a passed pawn and it's protected by a pawn. This is another technical term, protected passed pawn. Even super way much better than a passed pawn. Like if a passed pawn is 100% good, a protected passed pawn is like 800% good, is over 9,000. Because the opponent can never capture it. Watch what happens. He moves over here and he's like, it's protected. Now, protected by a pawn is what I mean. Pawns are just so important in chess. If it's protected by a bishop, it's great. I mean, good job. You protected your pawn with a bishop. I mean, congratulations to you, but that is not a protected passed pawn. Protected by a bishop doesn't count. Protected by a knight, great work. You protected your pawn with a knight. I mean, you should get a gold star, but that's not a protected passed pawn because it needs to be protected by a pawn. Just, as a player who's played a lot of chess, you can just feel the difference between this, which is nice, and this, which is amazingly, epically awesome. I mean, you just feel that when you look at that, you just feel these endorphins like, wow, those 2 pawns just feel great to me. But the knight here, the reason this doesn't feel as good is because you're using the entire power of the knight to defend a pawn. And knights are so powerful. You want them to go fort kings and queens. But when you're using the power of a pawn to defend a pawn, it's like so efficient. It's like 100% of the value of the pawn is being utilized in protecting this other pawn. You're doing a great job maximizing the utility of your pieces. You're really putting them to good use. So this position just makes me happy. Look at what black can do. And you move it over one space, it's still an outside protected passed pawn because it's pretty outside. Black cannot come around here and capture the base pawn. As soon as he steps a little too far, don't cross that line, man. Don't cross that line. As soon as he crosses that line, it's 4 moves to the queenie square. You'll never catch up. One of the bad things about chess is kings can't fly. And then the pawn gets through. So he comes through and he plays a race. He captures. He's too slow. He's too slow. Okay, just trust me on that. Maybe in some positions he's not too slow, but the rule is he's too slow. He can't come around and capture. There's other stuff going on in the game besides this king and this pawn. So protected pass. I mean, you should get this protected pass pawn. Even if black were looking like this. I mean, wow, talk about an illegal position. This is so good for white, if you can believe it. Because black can never, and the more advanced it is, the more powerful it is. Black can never leave this. It's like a dog with a short leash attached to a tree. Trees don't move far, and so dogs don't move far. They're attached to trees, and that's like this position. This king cannot go very far. Now, do you want to know how far? Let me teach you. You take the pawn, and you draw a line diagonally toward the back rank, like this. Diagonal, like a bishop moves. And when you hit the back, you're like, okay, I'm done with that part. What's next? Then you draw a square with those two as the corners. Same thing as like that distant opposition thing. So it goes like this. This square is the square in which black must stay, like that leashed dog. He cannot move outside. So if he goes here, boom, he's outside of that square, and now white can make a touchdown. 1, 2, 3. Black cannot catch. 1, 2. Oh, I'm too slow, man. Too slow. Moved outside of the square. That's called the diagonal square of pawns of chess whiz rule of endgame thumb 1. And it's the same thing on the other side of the board. If he goes over ZYQ files and he goes off too far, I mean, you just draw the diagonal in the direction that you're actually interested in. So that could be useful instead of having to count. He moves here, I move here, he moves here, I move here, he moves here, here. And then you're embarrassed because you're pointing at the sky while playing chess. You should just draw the diagonal in your mind. And that's going to save you a lot of embarrassment. So this protected pass pawn is so strong. So now let's talk about how to get a pawn through to the queen square. Here we've got a pawn majority over here. Let's not make this quite so unfair for black. Okay. Whoa, unfair again. Okay, this is going to be better. Okay, I can understand this position. Where'd the kings go? They're on the other chessboard. It's bug house, and the kings were put over there. So it's 2 pawns against 1. How do you break through with a passed pawn? This is another rule of thumb that you guys need to know. You move out with the pawn that's not opposed by another pawn. So in this case, get my hand lined up, it's not opposed if it's not facing another pawn. So this pawn, ooh, facing another pawn. This one, ooh, not opposed. So that's the one you use. So here, black here, black passes because with his king, which is not shown. Here, now you're making a pawn into a passed pawn, and you're getting a queen. If he captures, you capture back. Obviously, I'm sure you can tell how to get a queen from there. If he doesn't capture, no problem, make a queen, okay? Now let's look what happens if you do it wrong. You advance with the other pawn. Say you go 2 squares because you're an idiot. Black also moves like this. Now you're stopped. This is called a backwards pawn because it cannot advance or it will get captured. A pawn will take it backwards because you're really looking at the pawns here. Once again, this stuff's talking about pawns. I mean, if your pawn can't advance because a knight's going to take it, well, too bad for you. That's not a backwards pawn. If your pawn can't advance because a pawn is going to take it, and there's no other way for your pawns to support it, you're getting a lot closer to a backwards pawn. So this is problem. White made a bad mistake. He cannot make a passed pawn here. His pawn majority, 2 against 1, is relatively uselesser than it was when he played correctly. If he advances, black actually gets a queen first because he's now on the 5th rank. White's only on the 4th. 5th, 6th, 6th, 7th, 7th. 8th equals Q, and white is like, oh, I was 2nd place. 8 equals Q. So, okay, so they both got queens at the same time. Maybe that was okay. But it's not a queen for white. He didn't get a queen, and black got no queen, if you know what I mean. So it would have been way better to use the unopposed pawn. Let's now give you guys a pawn puzzle. Can you solve this one? Okay, it's white to move. Wow, white's doing great with those pawns up there. How can he make a passed pawn? Now, this is like a gimmick. I just threw this in because it's fun. This is not really like an endgame lesson, like solve this and you'll be an endgame genius. This is just for fun. So I'll give you a few moments, see if you can find a way for white to get a passed pawn. Oh, how funny. Blitzstream just said, maybe you could show the 3 versus 3 F5, G5, H5, F7, G7, H7. That's what I'm doing, Blitzstream. And you know what I did? I did this without reading your chat, which told me to do this. So do I get a bonus for that? I don't know. Maybe I do. Hello, Almurn. Thanks for calling me an awesome streamer and for the purple heart. It's not a real purple heart. It's a digital one. I'd rather have one from the president. Okay, you see it? Giving you a moment here. Giving you a moment. Okay, moment's up. One moment. I need a moment. I'm having a battle with phlegm. Okay, it's white to move. Advance in the middle is best. The reason is it's the answer to the puzzle. It doesn't matter which way black captures because it's kind of symmetrical. The kings are over there in Russia. So far, actually, a lot of viewers live in Russia. So United States, really far away in the United States. So far that they don't matter because this is going to happen way faster. So let's say black captures this way. Now is the key, the secret move. And it comes now. Do you see what it is? White pushes here and black captures that. White pushes here and white says, oh, I messed up. I need to start over, man. Put the pieces back. Put them back. Put them back. Okay, let's try again. Push in the middle. Black takes. The secret cool move is h6, which you may have seen. The usefulness of this puzzle is that you looked ahead 2 moves to see this. It's a good exercise for your brain to look ahead 2 moves into the future. By the way, you should do this when you're shopping also. You should say, I could buy this video game, but let me look ahead 2 moves and see, then I'll be out of money and I can't put gas in my car. Looking ahead 2 moves is useful in your financial life. So black says, well, if I take this, white sneaks in here. This is pretty brilliant, isn't it? Sneaks in here, makes a queen in 1 move. So I have to capture that. Then white pushes here and he gets a queen. I've seen this happen about twice in real chess games, this position where this tactic is useful. And I've been playing chess for about 15 years. So in 15 years, it happens twice. So every 7.5 years, this is going to be important for you, where you say, wow, I remember this, where white pushes in the middle, and then no matter which way captures, white pushes on the side that doesn't make any sense at first, and then you realize how brilliant it is because you're threatening a queen 2 different ways, and when black captures, white gets through with a queen. So if you memorize that, this will be useful about every 7.5 years. Give or take 3 or 4 years. So I hope you memorize that for your future self who's 7 years older than now. I think that'll come in handy. That's enough kings and pawns. We've actually used almost 45 minutes of this cast. So we're going to talk about rooks now. And the rooks are really, really important in the endgame. Here's why. They're like super powerful pieces that never do anything. They sit in the back and they don't trade so much. So rooks are the most common endings, maybe after just king and pawns. It's often that both players still have rooks on the board, because it's hard to get them traded, not that you're trying to. And so as a result, they are still hanging around. Now the saying is, and I've said this on the cast before after I wipe my eyeball out of my socket, that rook endgames are drawn. All rook endings are drawn. That's a saying because so many annoying rook endgames that you ought to be able to win are actually a draw. So for example, if you've got, let me duplicate this tab. Whoa, duplicate, and then clear board. If you've got an extra pawn here, and you're doing great, and you've got rooks on the board, I don't care if you're way up here, you can't win. If the rooks were gone, you could win. If the rooks were gone, imagine they're gone. White pushes here 1 square. He's got opposition, and then he triangulates and takes opposition and triangulates and takes opposition and crushes his opponent. But with rooks, it's a draw, even though you have the extra pawn. So disappoint. Very disappoint. So here's what you do with your rooks. First, you get them to the open file. I taught that in lessons on the opening, so you already know that. Then you put them to the 7th rank. Did I tell you that part? It's super, super powerful for 2 reasons. First of all, nom nom, all the pawns are there, so you just eat them up. Secondly, the enemy king is trapped behind. So that's just so useful to keep the enemy king from doing anything with his life. He becomes a bum. And meanwhile, your own king comes out and fights like a karate man. What are those called? Like Harashins? Karate doers of the karate. That's what your king becomes. So don't let your king get trapped out behind a rook on the 7th rank. Look at the problems white has here in this exact position that I've just conjured out of nowhere. White's going to lose this pawn, and then this pawn, and then this pawn. So let's say white says, I have to defend, so he moves here. This is, and I'm talking about theory here, not this exact position, but very, very poor for white, because he's defending his own pawn with a rook, which is lame for a rook, and his enemy rook is on the 7th rank pinning him. So it'd be much worse here, actually, because now the king, well, he's down a pawn. Wow, that got a lot worse. But the king's even more trapped behind here. In this specific position, the king could come over 1 and force the rook off the 7th rank. So that helps a lot. But if the rook gets on the 7th, it's really powerful. Now, even more powerful than a rook on the 7th is Two rooks on the seventh. Durr. Look what happens if you get two rooks on the seventh. It's basically like checkmate, and you resign at the same time, and your clock runs out because it's so powerful. I mean, you can just eat these pawns. Look what white has to do to defend them. I mean, he would have to have something like this just to hold on to this pawn. Meanwhile, the other side of the board is falling apart, like New Orleans during Hurricane Katrina. These pawns just die, and then the king gets checkmated. Watch. Yum, yum, yum. Checkmate. That's basically what's going to happen. Two rooks on the seventh is so powerful that we came up with a name for it. It's called pigs on the seventh. It does not a very good name, but it's powerful. Pigs on the seventh is what two rooks on the seventh rank is. So if you've got two rooks, put them both on the seventh. Wow, that's powerful. Now we need to talk about the interaction between rooks and passed pawns, because you know how powerful a passed pawn is. I'm moving things around. One moment, please. Okay. Okay. Here's our position. Something like this. Something like this. Okay. White has extra passed pawn. Passed pawn is defended by side from rook. Here's what I'm about to tell you. Defending by side from rook, not good. Not good, because rook... Actually, it's okay. The best place, what am I even trying to say? I'm making a fool of myself. Okay, let me get up here close to the camera, guys. If you've got a passed pawn, you put your rook behind that passed pawn. It makes it the best place for the rook. Here's why. Behind, push, 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 and you get the other guy's rook trapped in behind like this. Your rook has a lot of freedom of movement, and the other guy's rook has not very much freedom of movement. If it ever moves, you promote to a queen. Rook in front of passed pawn is not so good. I mean, it's okay, at least you have a passed pawn, right? But this way is better for the defender. He has all of the freedom of movement here, and white has no freedom of movement. He moves out of the way, black takes his pawn. Do you see what happened there? Whoever's trapped in front is not getting the better end of the deal. The exception would be if the pawn hasn't advanced very far. In this specific position, the pawn can't advance, so if black keeps his rook here, he could have some freedom of movement. But it's still, in theory, better to be behind, because the pawn usually advances. So get your rook behind the passed pawn. And the funny thing is, this applies for whether it's your passed pawn or the opponent's passed pawn. Because if it's yours, you get the thing way up here and trap him behind it. And if it's the opponent's, same deal. Okay, so behind is the other side of the board, because now he's promoting against you. But when you're behind, he's pushing down, and you're the one with the freedom of movement. So in this case, check, king up, and push. Now I'm just going to throw in an interesting tactic here that you guys need to know, because it happens to people, which is in a position like this. Okay. Black wishes to advance this pawn, but when he moves out, white takes it. Black can't do much else. I mean, he could walk his king way over here to hit that rook by the corner, and then walk his king way up here to promote. While he's doing that, though, this pawn will be causing trouble, so it ends up being a draw. The dangerous move white should not make, and this is what I'm teaching you right now. I'm going off script to teach you this important thing. Don't move here. Do you see why? Do you see why now? Okay, I'll give you another 3 seconds. Okay, time's up. Here's what black does. He threatens a skewer, and it skewers you. It happens. Rook way out to this side. Now he's threatening to promote his pawn, so you have to take it. Otherwise, he'll promote his pawn. And then check, and you just cry tears of sadness because he takes your rook. This happened because you moved away from the corner a little bit. So in this kind of position, and this is something you could just stow away in the back left corner of your brain, when your own rook is in front of the pawn and you got your pawn up here, so it's all stuffed up here in the corner, make sure, or the other way around, that the king has some way to avoid the skewer, because if it's here, 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 or here, sorry, not that close, but if it's any of these three squares, then you can move all the way around and skewer. And I've seen this happen a lot. You know how I said that other trick happened 2 times in 15 years? Well, this has happened probably about like 3 times a year. It's so common. So this is going to help you every 4 months just to know this thing. So white actually has to keep his pawn like this, back and forth, back and forth. Sorry, his king. In like this. It looks weird, but he needs to be doing this in order to prevent that skewer. Now the rook can't get around behind because there's no I1 or J1 for him to move to, and he can't get that skewer. The other problem is the king cannot advance up here, because when it comes out with check, then he promotes and makes his queen, and white doesn't have time to take it. So this is actually the only 2 squares for white's king. If he ever moves up here, or up here, the check occurs again, or even toward the pawn, then the skewer occurs, then he loses. So in order to defend this position properly, white has to keep his king in the corner. It's kind of counterintuitive because you want your king to be fighting. But in this specific position, you have to watch out for that skewer. So I'm teaching you about this skewer. I don't want to see you making this mistake ever again. So we've got about 10 more minutes, a little bit less in the cast. So now we're going to do practicing rooks in against a viewer. Now, Pseuder, if you join, I'm sorry you can't play again because you only get one try. So I'm sorry about that. But anyone else who's not Pseuder can do this. We're going to play one game against the viewers, and it's going to be a rook ending. And we're going to do similar pawns, but also rooks. So this is definitely a drawn position. The catch is we're human beings, and human beings make mistakes. So let's see what mistakes we're going to make. Zero Craft. I've been seeing your witty comments in chat, Zero Craft. Thank you for chatting with us. Thank you for joining ChessWhiz TV. I have to start. Yay, you were the fastest clicker. Congratulations. So you're going to show off your skills here. 1500 means you're disguising your actual rating because 1500 is the starting rating if you've never played at all. So I'm going to actually switch over to this view and see your other rating. You have no ratings. You have never played a rated game. You so clever. Okay, nothing's happening. This is a boring ending. Blitzstream on the chat says he would lose this position to many strong grandmasters. Grandmaster, which is GM for short, is the top chess ranking. The International Chess Federation, FIDE, it's actually French, is the world organization that gives out this title, and you have to be amazing to have it. Amazing. And if you have it, you're amazing. So he says, I play the world's best players and I would lose this position. That just goes to show how there's still possibilities here in this game, even though it's completely even, just because you can mess up. So I was testing you, Xenocraft. I was going to see if you castled or something, because in the opening you want to castle. So this is a trick. You can castle. Actually, I don't think I checked the box. Can I castle? I can. Oops, okay, I castled. Oh, give me a take back, please. I don't want to castle. I can castle. You don't castle in this position because it's the end game and you want to bring your king out. So I was giving you a chance to see if you were going to castle. You smartly didn't. So that was clever. Let's see if he agrees to my take back or if he makes me castle or not. He will. Okay, so I'm moving the king out. So if this happens rarely, but sometimes you're already close to the end game and you haven't had a chance to castle yet. You probably did something wrong, but sometimes not. Then you just don't even castle. Just bring your king out. You're going to have to play a lot of games of chess to get a feel for when you should bring your king out and when you should keep it safe. So the rule, like I said, is rooks to the open file. So this rook move is a little strange. His open file is the C file. By moving his queenside rook here, he's also doomed his kingside rook to not do very much, trapped behind pawns. Now he's moved his rook twice. Just like in the opening, you want to move each piece once in order to maximize its effectiveness. Here's what you can do if you don't know what to move, and this is useful in middle games also. You're like, what do I move? I don't know what to do. Look for a piece that's not living up to its potential, a piece that could be in a better position, and then move it to a better position. It's not rocket science. In this case, this rook's okay. I mean, it's in the center. It's at least, attacking something in the middle. Whereas this rook is being as lame as it was when it was born. It's never moved. So in this case, black should move this rook over to e8 instead of this rook, because he's taking that lamest piece ever and improving it. In this case, I'm advancing my rook so that I can double up my rooks. So this is something you can do anytime in the game. You say, which of my pieces is being the laziest? Move it somewhere less lazy, because you want to use all your pieces. You want to be active with everything. I'm just doubling up on this one file. It's a good technique when there's just one open line, is to put both rooks there, because there's nothing for your other rook to do. I mean, one rook is there, that's great. What does your other one do? Sometimes there's no other good spot for it, so you just team it up in that one line. Very powerful, very powerful. And if you get your queen in this too, rook, queen, rook, or rook, rook, queen, it's even more powerful. There's a name for that if you've got rook, rook, and then queen in the back. It's called Alekin's gun. It's named after a world champion whose name is Alekin. Probably from a famous game where he did it, and then it was called Alekin's gun. Cool. I have a chance to really trap the opponent in back like this. I know he's planning e5, after which capture, capture, and I can take him. So he can't quite do that. He can't play e5, so maybe I should just advance with my king. If I have nothing to do, I could just advance with my king, because there's always something more my king could be doing, right? In this case, same rule of thumb was applied. I said, well, this is a cool piece, this is a cool piece. This guy is being a little lazy, so I moved into a better square. Okay. E6. So now I've got a target here. This pawn is advanced, and this pawn is a little backward. We're going to be able to talk more about pawns in a future episode, but this is kind of endgames in general. So one thing I can do to this pawn is f4, f5. I kind of make a lever against it, because if it captures, then I can blast through. Not sure if I should do that. Another option is to play c4, but I'm not well positioned to take advantage of that an open file over there. I could also shift my rook over here to the G or H file, but I don't think I can make anything happen there. So I'm going to play f4. Reading the chat here, we got a link for Alekin's gun. Thank you, Olith. Now he's moved up here. I could play f5 and it's pinned. He can't capture, or I take this rook for free. He also can't advance. Take, 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 and he might do that. It's interesting. Or what if he just doubles up his rooks in defense? In defense. Then if I take, and nothing really happens. So I'll just take more space. I like, in an endgame, to have all my pawns forward nice and far. This might be a weakness because they can never move backwards. In the opening and middle game, you don't necessarily want to just, push your pawns because you could be creating weaknesses. My dad taught me when I was very young, if in doubt, push a pawn. Turns out he just wanted me to lose at chess to him because that's not good advice. If in doubt, you move a pawn. Then when you're in doubt next, you can never get that pawn back to where it belongs. So you're actually going to lose. I think this could be an error because he has 3 defenders and I have 4 attackers. This is a great way to tell. Instead of having to look ahead, I take, he takes, I take, he takes, I take, he takes, and now I'm pointing to the sky and look dumb, you can just count the pieces. Say, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 attacking the square, and he has 1, 2, 3. If you've got more attackers, then you could just take it for free. So that's what I'll do. Now I don't have to count. If I go here, then he goes here, and then visualize that chess position in my mind, such a lot of work. Instead, I can just count the attackers. It saves a lot of effort. So now he's got 1, 2, 3 attackers. I have 1, 2, 3 defenders. If you've got an equal number, the defender is okay. Now, of course, there's some catches to that. I mean, if the queen is going to have to capture next because you've got some bishop behind it, or at least one bishop behind it, that could be a problem because you don't want to trade your queen for a knight on a pawn. But keep an eye out for that when you're counting all that stuff. So here I'm now happy to trade off these rooks. He's in a tough spot. I've got this extra pawn now, and trading rooks will help me to win. If he can keep some rooks on the board, maybe, and I'm not guaranteeing this, but maybe he could draw because all rook endings are drawn. So he should actually move. Oh, not there. Let me take your rook for free. He should actually play rook f8. And keep rooks on the board, because with a pair of rooks on the board, that's the biggest chances for him to draw by far. And this is something you guys can take away. Because all rook endings are drawn, you should keep rooks on the board in order to keep a draw. Don't worry about trading queens. I mean, it's better to keep on the board, but it's rooks that are really important to not trade off. Okay, a free rook, that changes everything. But if he captured my rook, he would lose. He would lose. The rooks are gone. He'd lose. If he moved rook f8, he'd have a shot. I think he would still lose pretty badly. He would lose badly, but okay. I'm sorry, Zero Craft, but since I'm ahead of rook, this is no longer a useful use of time for anyone. So, sad, but I just resigned that chess position. How are we looking here? Well, it's a little dark in this room. Maybe for the next cast, I'll brighten it up. So that's been Lessons on the Endgame. We covered the opposition. We covered pawns and the opposition, how you kind of triangulate around him, push him back, take his pawn. We covered how to defend against a single pawn by moving straight back to cover those 2 squares in front of the pawn, and keep opposition to keep a draw there. We covered how a rook pawn is so drawish because all you have to do is get to the corner. Then we played a practice game where I had only a rook pawn and I still won because I was able to keep his king out of the corner. So that's the one exception to that. If his king can't even participate in the battle, then your rook pawn could win. Then we added, what did we do next? Outside pawns. I showed you that outside pass pawn that's so powerful. I mean, it forces king off to the side, and then you can do mean stuff to him on the other side of the board. The protected pass pawn is like an epic powerhouse of yes, because the opponent can never do anything to it. So if you get a chance to take a protected pass pawn, you should seriously consider doing that. Then we added rooks in, right after that. I'm thinking back the whole hour. That was a long time. After we added rooks in, we looked to take that open file, take that 7th rank, 2 rooks on the 7th. Wow, that was powerful. So powerful. Keep the opponent's king pinned back in there. Then we played a practice game with rooks. Passed pawn, Rook should go behind it. I think that's everything. So you could have just watched that summary instead of that hour. Sorry about the hour of your life. You'll never get it back. This has been Chess Whiz TV. We broadcast at these times. So let me bring this back for you. This view right here says 8 a.m., 11 a.m., 3 p.m. That's the same time, everybody. It's just different time zones. So the next cast is going to be Thursday right here on my chest at all those times. So this has been Chess Whiz TV. I appreciate that you tuned in. I'm glad you tuned in. Whoa, switching around camera. I'm glad you tuned in. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time, which is Thursday at 3 p.m. GMT. Bye.